I mean, if that is true, then I think that's super cool. Like, I'm glad even if I had a little part in that, that's a huge honor and really cool.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time in the channel, hit subscribe right now.
Joel, thank you so much for your time today. We're here to talk about your first 20th anniversary re-release. So Toxic Holocaust is now officially classic rock?
Pretty much. It feels that way. You know, once people started posting about it, like I didn't even keep up on it, you know, and I noticed, you know, some fans and things like that posting on Instagram that's like coming up on 20 years. I was like, wow, that's scary in a way, but it's cool at the same time. I'm glad I've, you know, been doing it this long, you know.
Yeah.
Cool.
People that were following you guys already in those days probably remember your Billy Idol look, I'm gonna call it.
Yeah.
No return to that, I see.
No, I called it my GBH look, but yeah, Billy Idol.
Yeah, fair enough. That's better. Yeah.
But yeah, probably not. You know, there's a difference when you're, you know, 42 going on 43, like I am now, compared to, you know, when I'm in my early to mid 20s. You know, it's like, don't know if I could pull that off now. So.
I mean, in all seriousness, we're talking here about a quote-unquote classic album. You're wearing, if I'm not mistaken, a Def Leppard Hysteria t-shirt as well. Yeah. You're wearing an 80s ball cap. Oh, yeah. Nostalgia is always strong in music and in metal for sure. It's no secret that your own music has always been inspired by songs from days before you were even around. But are you, in general, a nostalgic person? Like milestone like this? You mentioned the fans were the ones to tell me about it. I didn't really think of it. But do those milestones matter to you?
Strangely enough, I'm not super nostalgic for my own stuff. I think I'm more nostalgic for maybe things that I've experienced outside of that, like such as like more nostalgic for like, you know, early concerts I went to and, you know, bands I first got into, things like that, more so than things that I've personally done. Like I'm not the type of person that will make a record and then even, you know, let alone listen to it or anything like that. But also I don't even like think about it or like, you know, like like I said, the fans had to tell me that 20 years was coming out because this is kind of not how I'm wired. You know, I kind of like to keep moving forward with things and just, you know, I think that's part of the longevity also is that, you know, I don't try to get stuck in, you know, like certain bands, they come around like, you know, 20 years in, they go, well, what were we doing in those early days so we could recapture that, you know, like that's not really my, you know, that's not really my thing. You know, there's, you know, obviously there's a theme that runs out through all the Toxic stuff, but I don't try to recreate like past, you know, albums or like past sounds and things that I've done because it's, you know, you grow as a musician, you grow like, you know, just, you'll never make the same record again if it wasn't for that time period, you know, or that time and place. So it's just weird to try to, like a lot of bands you see, like classic bands, you know, without naming names, but they kind of try to recapture their old magic and never really is authentic, you know, because it's not really, you know, when you're, you know, in your 50s or, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, you're not going to have that same, it doesn't mean the music isn't good, but you're not going to have the same kind of outlook or like way you create music as you did maybe when you were in your early 20s, when you're first starting, maybe didn't know how to play well and things like that. You know, it's just, can't really create a lot of things like that, you know.
So we shouldn't expect you to revisit your own material and, you know, do re-recordings and stuff like that. But we do obviously know that you've had some fun with covering some classics. And I mean, I live in Canada now, but I'm born and bred from Belgium. And so I obviously, it's probably the hardest 7-inch to find from you guys, but the Max Overload cover you did from Acid.
Ah, yeah. I was wondering if we were going to bring that up
here, but that's of course. I mean, come on, that turned out really fun. I mean, actually, wearing another classic Belgian metal band shirt right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so not covering your own or re-releasing or reworking or trying to just kind of copy and paste what you did, but just because I have to ask, given that Max Overload song, which is such a fun song, what's on your wish list? Like stuff that you could play around with and give your own treatment to. Like, is there another song in the depths of hard rock and metal that, if you had the time, that you would love to give your own treatment?
I mean, there's so many, there's so many cool, bands from back then. And even now, like one thing that I kind of think is funny, like I think Midnight did that well is, they covered a contemporary band. Like they covered that band, The Spits, which is like something that bands used to do, like bands would do covers of bands that were active at the day, which I think is kind of cool actually. So I think if I did something again, it might be something, current if I if I did another cover, but there's a whole list of things from like lots of obscure bands, and that's kind of where I'm more at, because I mean all of the classic bands have been covered to death. I'd rather unearth some like obscure stuff, cover something like that maybe will get new people listening to it, so.
For 15 years, it was almost like clockwork. Every 2-3 years, new album coming out, and then after Consciousness, it took a little longer. The last album as well has now been almost 5 years, and obviously everybody knows what the world went through since you released that album and everything that put on hold and so on. But what are you playing around with now, knowing how busy you are with being behind the scenes as well with a lot of other bands?
Well, the new record will be coming out. It depends on how long the label takes, but it's getting, it's being mixed in like right around New Year's. So however long after that gets turned in that it takes to put out a record, that's when it'll be coming out. But it has, you're right. The past 2 records have taken me some time to put it out. There was some behind the scenes stuff that kind of took longer. Like for instance, in between Chemistry and Primal Future, there was like some, I was negotiating some record deal stuff, kind of figuring out what I was going to do next with that kind of thing. So that took a little bit of time. And then, just the normal, like you said, 2 to 3 years in between records. So that took a bit. And then with Primal and this one, it was kind of more so like I was waiting more to see what was going to go on with the whole COVID thing, just to see, what would be the best plan of action to, do another record. And then, because my thing is always, if I do a record, I want to make sure I can tour on it so I can promote it. I don't like to just put out records and then have them, basically die after you put them out if you don't promote them. So if you keep it alive by touring, you can actually get some longevity out of it. So that was my thought, and that's kind of why it took longer, is because I was kind of just waiting and seeing. So I mean, I've had tons of stuff written this whole time, but it was kind of like the whole lots of stuff going on in between those two. Hopefully, cross my fingers, but hopefully the next one will come out a lot quicker than the last 2. We'll see.
Well, time's running out, buddy.
Right, I know, right?
You've also been busy behind the scenes as well. You are more active in this industry than just quote unquote playing music or writing music. How has that, all those experiences, how has that evolved you as a I'm gonna say professional instead of just an artist? Like, do you consider yourself still first and foremost a musician that also just likes to play around with the technicalities, or are you more a music professional that also happens to play music still?
I never really thought of it now that you mention it, but I kind of feel like it's more so like it's like a split in between the two, more so now, only because I've built a name for myself more for mixing and mastering and things like that than I did before. So I'm still more well known with Toxic and things like that, of course, but personally, I kind of feel like it's kind of a split between the middle. But I think just because of how long I've been doing Toxic, I think I'll always think of myself as a musician first, just because that really was my first love. That was like when I first heard music that I liked, I wanted to do that too. So it wasn't, I was like going, I want to record that too. I was like, I want to play that, you know? So I think personally, I'll always consider myself a musician first, but just more so that, you know, the way I divide my time now is kind of about 50-50, just because, you know, things have really picked up, especially, you know, since COVID's passed and the pandemic and all that stuff. Bands have been more active making records again. So I've been slammed with that, and then also making records. I've been pretty busy lately. So
Yeah. You had a pretty active summer and fall.
Yes.
I'm sure we all remember the episode for Toxic Holocaust with Bus Invaders. So do have to ask you, when you rented your last van, did they also give you a bottle of mouthwash when they saw you, or was that just a one-time thing?
I think it was just a one-time thing. Actually, you know, since then, we actually bought our own used van. Really living it up now. But we bought a van, so that's now we can bring our own mouthwash. So
there you go. Awesome. Now talk about touring. You've done some cool tours. You were on the road with Havoc over the summer. You've obviously also supported a Megadeth show early September, but you are going to Europe as well, supporting Abbath on a very cool tour. I mean, let's all keep our fingers crossed that Abbath stays on his path. Let's call it. But assuming that that's a cool run, a couple of fun festivals as well that you'll be doing along the way. For all of us that are going to see one of those shows, I will actually be in Belgium. Like I said, I live in Toronto right now, but I will actually be in Belgium January, February. So there is a show in Belgium that I do hope to make my way to. So what can we expect? Cool. Are we going to get the because you had to delay promoting your latest work? Is this catching up for that, or with the re-release of it, you know, you don't want to revisit maybe the very old stuff too much, but what can we expect?
I think what's probably going to happen is we're probably going to incorporate some older songs that we haven't done in a while, and maybe we've been talking about it, maybe doing something off of Evil Never Dies that we've never done. At least not with this lineup. I mean, at least probably in the past 15 years or stuff. But you know, so basically new. You know, might incorporate one of the new songs from the new record too. We kind of just have to play it by ear, only because our guitar player actually doesn't live in the same city, so we just have to kind of coordinate that, make sure we can have enough time to jam everything, and you know, get everything tight, and that'll be great. I think so. I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be a fun run. It's definitely, you know, I think the lineup works. It's not, you know, obviously the same kind of music, but I think that's good in a way too sometimes. So I think it definitely makes sense. You know, that's gonna, and Hell Ripper is fucking killer too. So that'd be a great lineup.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And to your point, like just like you said earlier, people don't want to necessarily hear the same album by a band over and over again. So if you go to a show, you don't necessarily want to see 3 or 4 of the exact same bands at the same time. You guys do with your sound. You know, you were one of the few bands that kind of took over from this mid-90s Blackened thrash scene with, you know, Au Noir and a couple of really cool bands at the time. And that was a lot of cool music in a very short time, and it kind of died out a bit as old school thrash came back in the early 2000s, maybe, I don't know. But you guys were one of the few bands that kind of kept that going, having that punky Blackened vibe to your thrash. And now we see, Hell Ripper is an example of that. We see some bands finally coming back with that sound as well. At the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about, hey, do you ever sit back? Are you nostalgic? Do you look back? Do you ever take a step back and look around you and appreciate what all these newer bands are coming? Because they've all grown up with your music. Does that sink in at times, that I don't want to make you blush, but that your own legacy might be bigger than you realize?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see it that way, honestly, because, you know, we've always kind of been the band that was kind of like, I always used to say we were the Rodney Dangerfield of thrash metal, because we never got any respect or any like praise or anything like that for anything. So it was like, that was kind of one of those things, like I never did it for that, so I never really cared, but it was always me, I thought. So I never really looked at it like that. I mean, if that is true, then I think that's super cool. Like I'm glad even if I had a little part in that, that's a huge honor and really cool. But actually going back to the whole like Aranor and like all those bands that kind of did have that short-lived thing, I think a reason why a lot of those bands were kind of more of just like a blip, and like it was kind of more, they were all just kind of like side projects, you know. They weren't like full-fledged bands that were like actually actively like touring and like doing records and stuff like that. So while a lot of those records are very cool, it's just like a lot of them, you know, I thought a lot of it was cool and a lot of it was filler, you know. So it's like it was like I always wanted to do something in that vein where it was like more like, you know, kind of combining a lot of the elements of all that stuff together, but like it like where I wanted to do it like a, you know, as a, you know, as you can see now, like longevity wise, like continue doing records like that in as opposed to just one-off solo project or make a couple records and then, you know, whatever.
I mean, across all those bands, like, there was like a good like 15 cool projects / bands in the 90s. Maybe don't cover those songs, but what maybe the metal community could really use is the Joel Grind selection of mid-90s Blackened thrash anthems. That could be interesting. Now you mentioned those are a lot of those things are side projects coming from Mr. Side Project himself. With, let's be honest, questionable band names at times. What's just to kind of wrap us up on a different note, but you know, we know all your plans with Toxic Holocaust and you guys are going to be super busy, but is there anything bubbling up underneath the surface that we should keep our eyes open for from yet another side project for yourself?
Well, I mean, I've been doing a lot of the synth, more soundtracky stuff under my own, like under my name, and like I've been doing records, you know, fairly consistently with that, like more so than with Toxic, I would say, only because, you know, it's like there's a burnout factor too. If you just continuously do the same kind of music over and over, you almost need to either explore other kinds of music or just take a step back in order to not basically be just writing throwaway stuff or just, you know, running out of ideas completely, you know. So I think that helped a lot, kind of just thinking about music in a different way. And so, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some stuff like that coming out. Nothing planned right now. I'm just mainly focused on the new Toxic record and doing this upcoming tour and whatever else happens next year for touring. So that's my main focus right now.
I'll count the days till the start of your European show, and I hope to make it to the show in Belgium. Joel, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Fun that we have this re-release. There's a couple of, I already mentioned the Max Overload one. We need a re-release of that as well because it's impossible to find almost. Cool that you guys are at this stage and that after 20 plus years you guys are still going. And we'll keep our eyes open for announcements later in 2024 for the new record. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.